The rocks flew hard and fast, one catching Isadora's swollen belly as she stumbled through the dusty main street of Willowbrook. Behind her, the angry voices of the townswomen rose like a vengeful choir. "Whore! Harlot! Get out of our town!" Blood trickled down her forehead where the first stone had found its mark. Her hand instinctively protected her unborn child as another rock whistled past her ear. The Methodist preacher's wife led the mob, her face twisted with righteous fury, clutching stones in her pale fists. Isadora's legs gave out near the old oak at the town's edge. She collapsed, gasping, her dark hair matted with sweat and blood. The angry voices grew closer. She closed her eyes, waiting for the final blow that would end her shame and her baby's life before it began. The whoosh of an arrow split the air. When she opened her eyes, a tall Apache warrior stood between her and the mob, his bow drawn, another arrow nocked and ready. The townswomen had frozen mid-throw, stones still clutched in their trembling hands. "This woman is under my protection," he said in perfect English, his voice carrying the authority of thunder. "Touch her again, and you'll answer to me." The preacher's wife found her voice first. "You savage, this is a Christian town. We don't need your kind." The warrior's arrow found the wooden post beside her head, embedding deep into the oak with a solid thunk. "I said she's under my protection." The mob scattered like startled chickens, their courage evaporating in the face of his steady gaze and ready bow. Isadora stared up at her unlikely savior. His skin was bronzed by the desert sun, his black hair braided with leather and beads. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, but it only made his face more striking, not fearsome. His dark eyes held a gentleness that seemed impossible. "For someone who just faced down an entire mob, can you stand?" he asked, extending his hand. She took it, surprised by the calloused warmth of his palm. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you help me?" He studied her face, noting the bruises, the defiant tilt of her chin despite her tears. "Because I know what it's like to be cast out by those who claim to follow the path of love." He glanced at her rounded belly. "And because children should not pay for their parents' choices." "I have nowhere to go," she admitted, her voice cracking. The warrior shouldered his bow and looked toward the mountains where the Apache lands began. When he turned back to her, something had shifted in his expression, a decision made. "Please, come with me," he said simply. "Your children need a father." The word children hung in the air between them. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the life stirring within. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. "Nalnish," he replied. "And you are?" "Isadora." The name felt foreign on her lips after weeks of being called nothing but curses. "Isadora," he repeated, making it sound like music. "Will you come?" The Apache village materialized from the desert landscape like a mirage becoming real. Adobe dwellings clustered around cooking fires, children's laughter echoing off red canyon walls. But as Nalnish led Isadora through the settlement, the laughter died. Suspicious eyes tracked their movement, whispers following in their wake. An elderly woman emerged from the largest dwelling, her silver hair braided with turquoise. The tribal matriarch's weathered face showed no welcome as she approached. "You bring the white woman here, Nalnish?" Her English was accented but clear. "After what her people did to your wife, to your son?" Isadora felt Nalnish's hand tighten. On her arm, protective rather than restraining. "That was different, Grandmother Ayana. This woman needs our help." "Help?" The old woman's laugh was bitter. "She carries the seed of those who burned our sacred places, who drove us from our ancestral lands." Her eyes fixed on Isadora's belly with unveiled disgust. "And you would make her our daughter?" "I would make her my wife," Nalnish said quietly, the words stunning everyone within earshot. The silence stretched like a taut bowstring. Isadora's heart hammered against her ribs. In the space of one day, she'd gone from being a town pariah to this. A marriage proposal from a man she'd known for mere hours. Your wife died giving birth to your stillborn son because of the white man's diseases. Ayana's voice cut like obsidian. Their filth, their sickness. And now you bring another to carry on that legacy? Enough. Nalnish's voice carried the snap of command. She stays, that's final. But Ayana wasn't finished. The council will never accept this. The young warriors still burn for revenge against her people. You ask them to welcome the enemy into their homes? As if summoned by her words, 3 young Apache men approached, their faces painted for war. The leader, barely out of boyhood but already scarred by battle, stepped forward. Nalnish, he spat, have you lost your mind to grief? This white whore. The sound of fist meeting jaw cracked through the camp. The young warrior sprawled in the dust, blood streaming from his nose. Nalnish stood over him, fists clenched. Her name is Isadora, he said coldly. Use it, or keep your mouth shut. The fallen warrior wiped blood from his face, his eyes blazing with hatred. The council will hear of this, Nalnish. You cannot protect her forever. I don't need forever. Nalnish replied, helping the young man to his feet with surprising gentleness. Just long enough for you to see who she really is. That night, Nalnish brought Isadora to a small dwelling at the camp's edge, a place of exile disguised as hospitality. Inside, he'd prepared a bed of soft furs and left water for washing. Why? She asked as he prepared to leave her alone. Why? Are you doing this? You could choose any woman in this camp. Why the pregnant outcast? He paused at the doorway, his silhouette framed against the starlit desert. Because when I found you, you weren't running towards something better. You were running from something worse. I understand that journey. Your wife died believing I could have saved our child if I'd been a better provider, a stronger protector. His voice carried 3 years of guilt. I won't make that mistake again. You don't owe me anything. He turned back, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight. Maybe not. But I owe my son the father he never had. And maybe ... maybe your child can have what mine couldn't. The morning brought war council. Isadora woke to the sound of angry voices and the rhythmic beat of drums. Through the dwelling's small window, she watched Apache warriors gather in a circle, their faces painted in red and black. At the circle's center, Nalnish stood alone, defending his decision to men who clearly wanted her blood. She couldn't understand the rapid Apache words, but their meaning was clear in every gesture, every pointing finger directed toward her shelter. These men wanted her gone or dead. A soft touch on her shoulder made her jump. Ayana stood behind her, carrying a wooden bowl of water and cloth bandages. They argue about your fate, the old woman said, beginning to clean Isadora's wounds. From yesterday's stoning. Some want you returned to your people. Others want you to disappear into the desert. She paused. A few want you dead. And Nalnish? Nalnish wants the impossible. Ayana's hands were surprisingly gentle as she tended the cut on Isadora's forehead. He wants to heal the unhealable wound in his heart by saving you. Isadora winced as the old woman cleaned a particularly deep scratch. I never asked him to. Save me. No, Ayana agreed. But sometimes salvation comes whether we ask for it or not. She sat back on her heels, studying Isadora's face. Tell me about the father of your child. The question hit like a physical blow. Isadora's hand moved instinctively to her belly. He was the town banker's son, married, respectable. Her voice turned bitter, until his wife found us together. And then? Then I became the town whore, and he became the innocent victim of my seduction. Tears burned her eyes. They ran me out with stones and curses. He watched from his bank window and did nothing. Ayana nodded slowly. So you know something of betrayal? Yes. And of being judged for choices that seemed right at the time? Yes. The old woman stood, gathering her medical supplies. Nalnish's wife was beautiful, Apache royalty. She could have chosen any warrior, but she chose the scarred one because she saw something others missed. Ayana's eyes grew distant. When she died, something in him died too. Until yesterday. I met her. No, Ayana agreed. You're not. You're something else entirely. Something he needs more than another perfect Apache bride. Outside, the voices grew louder. Someone was shouting. Now the words harsh and guttural. Through the window, Isadora saw Nalnish standing straight and proud as warriors hurled accusations at him. What are they saying? She asked. Ayana listened for a moment, then translated. Kitchi says you'll bring disease to our children. Halok. Says your child will grow up to betray us like all white men do. Takota says Nalnish dishonors his dead wife's memory. Each translated word felt like another stone thrown. Isadora sank onto the bed of furs, overwhelmed. And what does Nalnish say to all this? Ayana smiled for the first time since they'd met. He says they're cowards who judge a woman by the color of her skin instead of the courage in her heart. He says any woman brave enough to face a mob alone while protecting her unborn child has more warrior spirit than most men. The drums stopped abruptly. In the sudden silence, Nalnish's voice carried clearly across the camp, speaking in English, now speaking so she could hear. This woman will be my wife, he declared. Our child will be raised Apache, and anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me directly. A gauntlet had been thrown. 3 warriors stepped forward to accept Nalnish's challenge. Kitchi came first, a mountain of a man whose war paint couldn't hide the hatred in his eyes. He fought with a war club, swinging it like thunder, each blow meant to crush bone. But Nalnish moved like liquid water, flowing around the attacks, using the bigger man's momentum against him. When Kitchi finally fell, gasping in the dust, Nalnish helped him to his feet with respect. Halok fought with knives, 2 curved blades that sang through the air like deadly birds. The dance was beautiful and terrifying, steel flashing in the morning sun, 2 warriors moving in perfect, lethal synchronization. Blood flowed from both men before Nalnish finally pinned Halok's arms, the knife points touching his throat. Yield, Nalnish whispered. I yield, Halok gasped, but it was Takota who worried Isadora most. Young, fast, and burning with the righteousness of the wronged. He'd loved Nalnish's dead wife like a sister, and her death had broken something in him that never healed. They fought with traditional Apache lances, long wooden spears tipped with obsidian points. This wasn't the fluid dance of the knife fight or the brutal power of the club. This was poetry written in violence, 2 masters of the same art testing each other's skill. Takota was faster, his lance a blur of motion. But Nalnish was wiser, reading his opponent's moves 3 steps ahead. When Takota's thrust finally went wide, Nalnish's lance point came to rest against the young warrior's heart. Do you yield, nephew? Takota's eyes blazed with unshed tears. She died because of them. My sister died because of their diseases, their poison. How can you replace her with one of them? I'm not replacing her, Nalnish said gently, lowering his lance. I'm honoring her memory by showing the same compassion she would have shown. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because she told me the night before she died. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I wouldn't let grief turn me into the kind of man who judges others by their blood instead of their hearts. Takota's lance fell from nerveless fingers. She said that? She said that. The young warrior looked across the circle to where Isadora stood watching, her hand protectively covering her unborn child. For a long moment, their eyes met. Then Takota nodded slowly. I yelled, "Uncle." The formal challenges were over, but Ayanna stood up from the elders' circle, her voice carrying the authority of generations. "The warriors have spoken their piece," she announced. "Now let the women speak theirs." What followed was worse than the physical combat. Apache women stepped forward one by one to recite their grievances against the white settlers: children killed by disease, sacred sites desecrated, families torn apart by the endless march of westward expansion. Each story was a knife thrust to Isadora's heart. She wanted to protest that she'd never done those things, never supported them, but she knew it didn't matter. She carried the sin of her entire race in their eyes. When the last woman finished her testimony, Ayanna looked directly at Isadora. "Do you have anything to say for yourself, white woman?" Isadora stepped into the circle center, her legs shaking but her voice steady. "I can't undo what my people have done to yours. I can't bring back your dead or restore your sacred places. I can only promise that this child I carry will be raised to honor Apache ways, to understand that all people, red, white, brown, or black, bleed the same color when they're hurt." She paused, looking around the circle of hostile faces. "You don't owe me anything. But if you let me stay, if you let Nalnish be the father my child needs, I swear by everything I hold sacred that I'll spend my life trying to be worthy of that gift." The silence stretched like the desert itself, vast, profound, and heavy with the weight of decision. Finally, Ayanna spoke. "We'll put it to a vote." The voting pebbles fell into the clay pot with sounds like distant thunder. White stones for acceptance, black for rejection. Isadora sat outside the circle, her fate being decided by people who'd known her for less than 2 days. Each Apache adult cast their vote in silence, their faces revealing nothing. Children too young to vote watched with wide, curious eyes, whispering among themselves about the strange white woman who might become their sister. When the last pebble fell, Ayanna overturned the pot. White stones scattered across the red earth like stars. Isadora counted them with her heart hammering 1, 2, 3. She lost track as more spilled out, far more than the scattered black stones of rejection. "It's decided," Ayanna announced. "She stays." But the old woman's expression remained troubled. "However, there are conditions. She must learn our ways completely, our language, our customs, our sacred traditions. She must contribute to the tribe's welfare, not just take from it. And," Ayanna's voice grew stern, "the child she carries must be raised fully Apache. No white man's religion, no white man's ways. Can you accept this, white woman?" Isadora stood slowly, her hand resting on her rounded belly. "I accept, but I have a condition of my own." The crowd stirred uneasily. Even Nalnish looked surprised. "You may speak," Ayanna said. "When this child is old enough to choose, he or she will know the truth about both sides of their heritage. The good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly. I won't lie about who their mother was or where they came from." Several warriors began to protest, but Ayanna raised her hand for silence. "And if the child chooses the white world over ours? Then I'll respect that choice and I'll leave with them. Even if it means leaving Nalnish?" The question hit like a physical blow. Isadora looked at the man who'd offered her everything: protection, love, a future for her child. The thought of losing him felt like tearing out her own heart. "Even then," she whispered. Nalni Sate stepped forward, his face unreadable. "And what if the child chooses to remain Apache? Then so do I forever." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I can accept those terms." The crowd began to disperse, but Dakota lingered. The young warrior who'd fought so fiercely against her presence now approached with something like respect in his eyes. "You surprised me, white woman," he said quietly. "Most of your people would promise anything to save their skins, then break their word as soon as it was convenient. I'm not most of my people, Isadora replied. No, he agreed. I'm beginning to see that. He paused, then added, my sister would have liked you. As the sun set over the desert, painting the canyon walls in shades of fire, Nalnish led Isadora to a high ridge overlooking the village. The Apache camp spread below them like a constellation of hope. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Once we're married, there's no going back. You'll be Apache in every way that matters. Your old life, your old world, it ends here. Isadora looked back toward the distant town that had cast her out, then forward toward the village that had voted to embrace her. The choice seemed impossibly clear. My old life ended the moment you stepped between me and those stones, she said. Everything since then has been a gift. He turned to face her fully, his scarred face gentle in the dying light. Then let me give you another gift. What? A proper proposal. He knelt on one knee, taking her hands in his calloused ones. Isadora of no tribe, will you marry me? Will you let me be father to your child and protector of your heart? Through her tears she whispered, yes. The wedding preparations began that night. The Apache wedding ceremony took place under a canopy of stars, with the entire tribe gathered in witness. Isadora wore traditional Apache dress, white buckskin decorated with turquoise and silver, her hair braided with sacred herbs and feathers. The transformation was complete. Looking at her now, no one would guess she'd once been the outcast of a white settlement, but it was Nalnish who took her breath away. Gone were the simple clothes he'd worn when he saved her. Tonight he stood resplendent in full ceremonial regalia, a warrior chief in beaded buckskin, his hair adorned with eagle feathers earned in battle. The scar on his face seemed like a badge of honor rather than a disfigurement. Ayana performed the ceremony, speaking in rapid Apache while the tribe chanted responses. Isadora couldn't understand the words, but she felt their power ancient. Promises woven into the fabric of time itself. When Nalnish placed the silver bracelet on her wrist, marking her as his wife, she felt something shift deep inside her soul. This wasn't just marriage, it was rebirth. The frightened, shamed woman who'd fled Willowbrook was gone forever. The celebration lasted until dawn. Warriors told stories of great hunts and battles while women sang traditional songs. Children danced around the fire, their laughter bright as the sparks that rose toward the stars. For the first time in months, Isadora felt truly happy. But happiness, she'd learned, was a fragile thing. The attack came 3 days after the wedding, just as the morning sun crested the canyon walls. Soldiers, 2 companies of U.S. cavalry, armed with rifles and righteous anger. They'd come looking for stolen cattle and found an Apache village to blame. The first shots shattered the peaceful morning like thunder. Women screamed, children cried, warriors rushed for their weapons. In the chaos, Isadora lost sight of Nalnish. Caught up in the tide of panicked villagers fleeing toward the canyon's protective depths. This way. Dakota grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a hidden cave. The soldiers mustn't see you. If they know you're white, they'll think we kidnapped you. But Isadora pulled free, her eyes searching the battlefield for her husband. She found him near the horse corral, rallying the young warriors for a desperate defense. An army rifle cracked, and she watched in horror as bloomed across his chest. Nalnish. Her scream cut through the battle's din. Time slowed to syrup. She ran toward him, her pregnant belly making her awkward but determined. Another shot rang out, this one meant for her, but Dakota threw himself between them. Taking the bullet in his shoulder. She reached Nalnish as he fell, catching him in her arms. His blood soaked through her dress, warm and sticky against her skin. The cave? He gasped. Take the children to the cave. Don't let them see you. I won't leave you. You have to. For the baby, for our future. His hand found hers, gripping it with fading strength. Promise me, Isadora. Promise you'll survive." Through her tears, she made the promise. Then she kissed him a kiss that tasted of copper and salt in love beyond measure and fled. The massacre lasted 3 hours. When the smoke cleared and the soldiers finally rode away, 17 Apache lay dead, including 6 children. Survivors crept from their hiding places like ghosts, moving through the ruins of their home with hollow eyes and broken hearts. Nalnish was still breathing when they found him, but barely. The bullet had punctured his lung, and pink foam bubbled at the corners of his mouth. Ayana knelt beside him, her weathered hands moving over the wound with practiced skill. "He needs a doctor," she said quietly, "a white doctor. The kind of medicine we can't provide." Isadora made the decision without hesitation. "Take him to Willowbrook. I know the doctor there. They'll arrest him or kill him outright. Not if I'm with him. Not if I make them understand." It was a desperate plan, born of desperation and love. But as Nalnish's breathing grew more labored, desperation became their only hope. The journey to Willowbrook took 2 days of riding through scorching desert heat with Nalnish barely clinging to life. Dakota, wounded but determined, rode beside them as escort and protector. Ayana had wanted to come too, but someone needed to stay with the survivors. To help them rebuild from ashes. They reached the town at sunset, 3 figures silhouetted against the dying light. Isadora rode in front, her Apache dress and braided hair marking her as clearly as any war paint. Behind her, Nalnish lay unconscious across his horse's back, his breathing shallow and labored. Dakota brought up the rear, his rifle ready despite his wounded shoulder. The town erupted in panic at their approach. Windows slammed shut, doors barred, men reached for guns. But Isadora rode straight down the main street toward Dr. Henley's office, her chin held high despite the familiar fear clawing at her chest. "Mary, Mother of God," Dr. Henley breathed when she burst through his door. "Isadora, is that really you?" She'd known Marcus Henley since childhood. Kind man who delivered half the babies in Willowbrook and patched up the other half when they got into scrapes. If anyone would help them, it would be him. "Please," she gasped, "you have to save him. He's my husband." The doctor's eyes widened as Dakota carried Nalnish inside and laid him on the examination table. "Sweet Jesus, girl, what have you gotten yourself into? Please, Marcus, just ... please help him." Dr. Henley looked from the unconscious Apache warrior to the desperate white woman who'd once been the town pariah, now transformed into something he barely recognized. Her eyes held a strength that hadn't been there before, a fierce protectiveness that spoke of love deeper than social conventions. "All right," he said finally, rolling up his sleeves. "But you need to know, there's talk in town about what happened to the cavalry patrol. They're saying Apache raiders ambushed them." "That's not what happened," Isadora said fiercely. "The soldiers attacked the village without provocation. They killed children, Marcus. Innocent children." "I'm not taking sides," the doctor said, examining Nalnish's wound. "I'm just trying to save a life. But you should know Sheriff Morrison's organizing a posse. They'll be here soon." As if summoned by his words, heavy boots stomped up the porch steps. The sheriff burst through the door with 3 deputies, guns drawn and faces grim. "Well, well," Sheriff Morrison sneered, his eyes taking in the scene. "Look what the desert dragged back to us, the town whore and her savage husband." "Get out of here, Morrison," Dr. Henley snapped, not looking up from his patient. "This is a place of healing, not politics." "The hell it is. That redskin's a prisoner of war, and she's a traitor to her own race." The sheriff's gun swung toward Isadora. "You're both under arrest. On what charges?" Isadora stepped between the gun and her unconscious husband. "Conspiracy, treason, aiding and abetting the enemy. Take your pick." "The only conspiracy here is your ignorance," she shot back. "This man saved my life. He's done nothing but protect innocent people." "Innocent?" Morrison's laugh was ugly. "Tell that to the families of the soldiers he killed. He didn't kill anyone. The soldiers attacked first. Enough." The sheriff cocked his gun. "You're coming with us and the savage dies here and now." That's when Dakota spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who'd seen too much death. "You kill him, white man, and you kill the only witness who can tell your government what really happened at the village." Morrison hesitated. "What do you mean?" "The Apache Council will want answers. They'll want to know if this attack was sanctioned by Washington or if it was just one rogue commander looking for glory." Dakota's eyes were steady as granite. "You kill us now, and you'll have every Apache nation from here to Mexico demanding war. But if you let this man live, let him testify to what happened. Double quotes, the implication hung in the air like smoke. Morrison was cruel but not stupid. The last thing the territory needed was a full-scale Apache uprising. "Fine," he said finally, holstering his gun. "The savage lives, for now. But you're all staying here under guard until the territorial governor decides what to do with you." As the sheriff and his men settled in to wait, Dr. Henley continued working over Nalnish. The bullet had lodged near his heart, and removing it would require all of the doctor's skill. But as the hours passed and color slowly returned to the wounded man's face, hope began to bloom in Isadora's chest. Near dawn, Nalnish's eyes fluttered open. His gaze found hers immediately, and despite his weakness, he smiled. "Still here?" he whispered. "Still here," she confirmed, taking his hand. "The baby? Safe. We're all safe." 2 weeks later, the territorial governor's investigation cleared them of all charges. The cavalry commander who'd ordered the attack was court-martialed for exceeding his authority. Nalnish's testimony, backed by Dakota's and several surviving villagers, painted a clear picture of unprovoked aggression, but more importantly, it opened a dialogue. For the first time in years, Apache and white officials sat down together to talk peace instead of war. It wasn't a perfect solution. There would still be conflicts, still be misunderstandings, but it was a start. Isadora gave birth to their daughter on the first day of spring, as snow melted in the mountains and wildflowers bloomed in the desert. They named her Ayana after the grandmother who'd become her greatest protector, and she grew up speaking both Apache and English, bridging two worlds with the easy grace of childhood. Years passed. The Apache village was rebuilt, stronger than before. Other mixed couples followed Nalnish and Isadora's example, creating a small but growing community of people who refused to let blood determine their destiny. The town of Willowbrook slowly learned to see their Apache neighbors as people rather than enemies, and on quiet evenings, when the desert wind sang through the canyon walls, Nalnish would hold his wife and daughter close, remembering the day he'd stepped between a desperate woman and a mob of stones. It had been the beginning of everything: love, family, hope, and healing. "Do you ever regret it?" Isadora asked him once, watching their daughter play with Apache and white children. Regret what?" "Saving me. Choosing me over an easier path." Nalnish looked at their daughter, then at the mixed community they'd helped create, then at the woman who'd become the center of his world. "Never," he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "You didn't just need saving, Isadora. You were the answer to a prayer I didn't know I was praying." Their love story became legend in the desert, a tale told around campfires of how two broken people found wholeness in each other, and how their courage to love across the divide had helped heal an entire community. It was a story of second chances and chosen families, of children who belonged to all worlds and none of love powerful enough to stop stones in mid-flight and turn enemies into family. And if sometimes, late at night, travelers passing through the desert claim to see ghostly figures dancing under the stars, an Apache warrior and his pregnant bride, celebrating their eternal wedding beneath the endless sky, well, some stories are too beautiful to end with mere happily ever after.